Hello, I'm Donna Arnold and I'm the story hunter. Today my story is about a man who at the age of 44 years decided to enlist for World War One. I asked myself the question, who would do that? There's obviously reasons why. Don't know yet, but I'm hoping that one day we will find out. But anyway, this man also survived World War One. He was one of the lucky ones that came home. Now, he was a bit of a character, so I do have some more information about him. But before I go on with that, let me tell you a bit about myself. I have been passionate ever since I started doing the family tree. It has just been a magnificent story, and there was a period of time there where I just sat for months, day upon day, doing research. I just love it. I love finding out these little bits of information and where they lead to and the towns they go to. I'm a big traveller, so I will certainly go to these towns as soon as this situation is over, but I will go to these towns and I will look and do a little bit more research as much as I possibly can to find out where my family roots came from. I also love watching that show on TV, Who Do You Think You Are? I love listening to everybody's stories because there's like Brooke Shields. She was a descendant of one of the King Louis. I can't remember if it was the 14th or which one it was. Martin Sheen has a magnificent story as well. He's got ancestors that actually knew each other way back, generations back, and had a bit of an altercation and the story come to the fore. And now further down, a few descendants and relationships later, generations is the word I'm looking for, generations later, they actually come together and down into Martin Sheen's line. As he said, you couldn't write a script for it, but he was just fascinated, and so am I. So if you're interested in having a bit of a story in regards to some of your relations, your family roots, your ancestors, I'd love to help you. I can create a story for you. Or if you just want help finding your way through the maze that our ancestors have, our family roots have left behind, there are plenty of dead ends. So I'd love to help you in that way as well. Now, about this man who enlisted at the age of 44. Well, he actually is my great-grandfather. And I've only just basically found out this information that he did go to World War One. So there was a lot of information in regards to his military. But before that, let's start at the beginning. Born in 1869 in the Adelaide Hills, his mother was German surname, and she lived at Handorf. So there are wineries connected to the family. I must follow that tree too. Anyway, obviously it seems that he was quite prepared to leave Adelaide and head off to the Big Smoke in Sydney town. There, at an age of around about 20, he's married Clara, his wife, and settled down, become a blacksmith. He worked in the railways, which was relatively secure. He did seem to have itchy feet because he moved around a bit, not sure of the reasons why, but the electoral rolls show that he was in a few places in Hurstville in Sydney and some places in Newtown in Sydney. Now also his name comes up in the local paper. So he made it to the paper, and unfortunately it wasn't a positive thing. His house got broken into in broad daylight and had quite a fair bit of jewellery stolen, gold, silver, gold chains, his fob watch, some of Clara's rings, quite a bit of a haul. It was all listed in the paper, what was stolen. So from there, the next time we hear from him, we also see birth certificates and things like that coming through. It looks like his last child was born in 1904. And then from there, in 1908, he comes up again. Now, in two places. One in an electoral roll in Mackay, so we'll just put that aside for the time being. But the other one, also in 1908, he gets into the papers again. Well, at this stage, they're living on an island at Woy Woy. So it's just a short row on your rowboat across to the mainland. And it's Clara. She's decided, had enough. She's applied for a divorce. So what's been going on? Luckily for us, we can see in the newspapers back then, they list everything. No, but people's business are not private back then, so it's all in the newspaper. The story goes from Clara that Frederick, my father, great-grandfather, he actually disappeared for a while. 9 weeks he was away, so Clara wasn't very happy with him. And when he came home, she made it well known that she wasn't happy. And of course, he promised he would never do that again and vowed he'd never go away like that again. So everything was fine. But not long after that, he's gone to go away again and disappeared for 10 months. So Clara was not a happy lady. When he finally returned, where have you been? He said he's been living in New Zealand with another woman. Well, of course, that's the end of that. A fight ensued, and she says he chased her around through the house. She decided to hide in the boathouse to save herself, to be secure, and she just watched him from a distance, and he packed his clothes into a suitcase, threw it in a dinghy, and rowed off into Woy Woy, into the capital. So that's where we've left him there. Now in 1908, of course, he's on a electoral roll up there. It all remains relatively quiet until 1914, where he's decided he's going to enlist for World War I. So it goes to the reason he's 44 years old, or nearly 44 years old. Why would you do something like that? That all remains a secret, but I'm sure as time goes by, we might be able to find out a little bit more information. So anyway, he's got his application form, and on the form it actually says that, are you married? And he put down widowed. And I thought, yes, he's divorced, but I recall when I was 9 years old in 1969, Clara made it in the newspapers at 100 years old. She'd received a telegram from the Queen congratulating her on reaching 100 years old. So Frederick is not a widow. Anyway, don't know the reasons why he did that. There was talk somewhere along the way that married or divorced, some of his pay would have gone back to his wife. So he's just put down widowed. Now, how could they prove otherwise? Back then, it was just a case of sign them up. Are they healthy? Can they go? So that's how his documents were set out. He was a widow. Going over into France, he probably thought there's got to be better than where he is now. So anyway, what he found there was a little bit sad for him, I'm afraid. He found himself in a number of places. His records show that there were quite a few red marks on his record, literally red marks. Unfortunately, he was found drunk in the trenches, and I don't blame him for this. Drunk in the trenches quite often. When he was given leave, he came back late, so technically he was AWOL and penalised. So his penalty for soldiers were deducting days' wages. So first time around, it was a let go. Then it went on to 3 days' wages he lost, and then 7 days' wages, and then 14 days' wages, and then 21 days' wages. And then the maximum penalty was 28-day wages. So a whole month was lost, but that was 3 times. So probably wasn't your ideal soldier, not the perfect soldier. Which I think probably got him moving around. He moved to quite a few places in France, in Rouen, in Fronlac, and also Nunn. And he also has it shown up on his record in Lecce, in Corsica. And also he's been sent back to Egypt, just outside Alexandria, where the Australian Imperial Forces training camp was. Now, from there, the 9th Battalion, which is where he signed up in Rockhampton, the 9th Battalion was shipped across. First stop is Marseille, and then off to the Somme. And it was when I realised, and I did some Googling, I found out, I've heard of the 9th Battalion before. This is where my great-grandfather was. He was in the 9th Battalion. So he was in the Somme and Pozières, and there's a photo actually of the 9th Battalion, and some of the men were suffering from trench foot, which is where your feet are constantly wet in water and mud, and a fungus, a attacks the flesh of the feet. And unfortunately, my great-grandfather suffered from trench foot as well. So they have to be taken away to heal. And once he was sent back into the trenches, we're getting close to the end of 1918, and he was shot. So he was then shipped off to London, because he survived. And by then it was the end of the war. So once he recovered, he was actually shipped home. Now here he disembarked in Brisbane, not where his hometown where all his family is. He disembarked in Brisbane and found his way back to central Queensland. So that was 1921 was his last document that we can see. It's unfortunately, it's a notice of his death. That was in the newspaper as well. He got caught up in a swollen creek, a flooded creek, and drowned. So the great-grandfather did a lot and survived a lot of harrowing experiences for years over in World War I, only to cut it a bit short when he got home at the age of around about 52. So I've learnt a lot about my great-grandfather. I say thank you for what you have done. Well, that's it for me for this story. If you're still with me, thank you for listening, and I hope to see you next time. Have a great day. Bye.